All right, we should be live now.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ellen Hornady, and on behalf of the Nebraska Arts Council, I'd like to welcome you to this panel meeting. We have convened to review applications for the Arts Project grant category. Decisions made by this panel will determine the funding for all applications. They'll be reviewed by the NAC Council at the next meeting to convene on June 6th, 2023. And I'd like to take a moment for each of our panelists to introduce yourselves to one another and to those listening in. And I'll call upon you one by one. I'll start with myself. I'm Ellen Hornady. I'm from Grand Island, Nebraska, and I'm representing the Nebraska Arts Council. I serve on the council and I'm chairing this panel. Deb.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Bunting. I worked for the Nebraska Arts Council for 17 years, now retired. I have a DB consulting business, which specializes in grants and grant writing and grant management.
Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Hochstetler. I'm the executive director of the Stewart Museum in Grand Island, Nebraska, and I'm also a visual artist.
Thank you. And Peter?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Peter Lefferts. I'm a retired professor from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where I taught music history and was for 4 years the associate director and then once the interim director of the School of Music there.
Thank you. And Roxanne?
Hi, I'm Roxanne Stanulis. I'm from Dover, Delaware, and I currently work at the Delaware Division of the Arts. I've been there for 17 years in a variety of roles, and most recently as the Artist Program Services Coordinator.
Thank you. And then we have Mike Markey, the Executive Director from the Nebraska Arts Council. Mike, would you like to say anything?
Yes, thank you, Ellen. I would, and I want to welcome everybody and thank you very much for joining us today. And I wanted to let you know that this is a very exciting time, that there are 42 of these applications this time, which means that there is more art and art projects going on throughout the state, and that's always exciting. It also means that the competition for our dollars is going to be even tighter. So just to sort of brace you for that. And then finally, as part of that, it means it's all the more important for you to take the time to thank your senators, your elected representatives for their role in public funding for the arts, and tell them how important it is and why there should always be more. So with that, I'm going to hand you back to our friends. And we have a stellar panel, and I thank them for helping us out. And I can't wait to hear about these grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Rachel Morgan will provide a brief synopsis of each application, and then I'll be calling upon our panelists one by one for their comments in this order. First, I will call on the primary reviewer, and then I'll call on the secondary reviewer, and then the remaining reviewers one at a time. And so we'll go ahead and get started with our first application. Rachel.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Ellen, I do just want to explain a couple of things on the live stream to anyone who may be listening in. And just a reminder to the panelists that even though you can't see or hear anyone, there may be somebody listening in. So just a reminder for that. And just to let anyone listening in know, we plan to take a break about every hour. If any of the panelists do need to take a break before then, please just let me know. And for those listening in, we'll let you know when we're going to come back so that you're aware of that also. And also to let you know the procedure of how the applications have been reviewed and processed is that the panelists have received and have read all the applications in advance. Each application has been assigned a primary and a secondary reviewer. The applications will be discussed and then individually scored by each panelist according to the criteria for this category. That was also found in your application. The panelist scores are then averaged, and the applications are ranked according to that average from highest to lowest. And so all of the funding is based on those scores. It's a mathematical formula that will later be applied to determine the grant award amounts for the approved applications. And award calculations are based on the average score for each application and the available funds in that category. Therefore, higher ranking applications will receive a greater percentage of their request. The NAC staff are here to assist with the panel process, but we remain neutral. We are here to help you on the front end. Once it comes to the panel process, it is really about the panelists and it is their conversation today. So as such, we do not engage in the panel discussions unless if they ask us any clarifying questions that we may know if it's appropriate. And just a final note, the applications will be discussed in alphabetical order. And so you know what order they're going to go in. So with that, we'll jump into the first review. And I will give a brief summary. So the first review is the African American Empowerment Network. This NAT grant will help pay for artists performing in the Dreamland Park. There is a balloon artist that would create a variety of balloon designs for children to take with them, face painters, raku firing, and artists that will assist the children as they create their own pottery. There's also a horse-drawn carriage and cartoon characters that dance and interact. All activities will take place on Saturday, December 2nd.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And we will start with our primary reviewer, Deb.
Thank you. This application, the 13th annual celebration of this is a very unique part of this community. It's a chance that it's a unique opportunity where people come together. I have attended this event personally, but just sticking strictly to the application. The application did a great job of describing the event in detail, made great use of the space afforded to tell your story. The artistic merit of the project, I think, is very evident. This is a time when people come together when you're talking about fairs and festivals. It's one of the largest family-oriented events in this organization. Many of the people that are included in this application are or have been past recipients of Nebraska Arts Council funding. The work samples were clear. They provided links. They did also provide a mock-up of the part of the marketing materials and all the other things that would help spread the good word about this project. The artist bios, it was clear that they had the ability to carry out the project. The administration bios, I was particularly impressed with this because it gave a clear picture of their ability to organize and carry out this project from inception to final report. The project goals were clearly stated, very well clearly stated. The project evaluation went into detail, talked about how they would measure and meet the goals that they had set previously. The planning process was very clear. Budget left me with no questions. It's a really tight budget when you look at the impact of this. What I particularly appreciated with this is that you didn't have to be in Omaha to have a clear idea and a very clear snapshot of the demographics of this community. I appreciate that they use that and that they also use current demographics. The impact of the program is clearly stated. Promotion is amazing. Underserved community outreach is one where it hits it out of the ballpark. Community partnerships are listed. There are several and varied. Locations clearly stated. It meets all the accessibility requirements, and they did a good job of telling their story.
Thank you, Deb. Roxanne, do you have anything to add?
Deb's a tough act to follow, but I'll
It
try.
Come on,
Um,
we do this. Come on, Roxanne.
I know. I liked the variety of artistic activities, from hands-on pottery to musical performances. The visitor numbers suggested that this is relevant to the community. It's the signature event for this arts, culture, entertainment business district. I thought it was great that they had the artists committed already at this date. I thought that there were no issues about their quality. For planning and evaluation, I agreed with Deb that, they had robust tracking and measuring systems for their goals. I thought the administrators were highly qualified. The timeline document was impressive in its level of details. It had color codes, which I thought was great. And the budget was very detailed. And as Deb said, as an outsider, I got a very clear picture of the community where this event was happening. I really liked that they talked about the project being a result of feedback gathered through the public in the North Omaha Village Revitalization Plan. And it had a lot of partners and very strong letters of recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Chris, anything additional you'd like to add?
Just a couple of quick things. The first is that I think that the level of artistic quality is very high. I know a lot of these ceramicists, and they're very, very good at what they do. I guess one of the things that I would like to see as the event, it's the 13th event, I believe, and as the event continues to grow, is there any specific impact that we're looking for between those artists and those children? I know that it's a tough timeline to cram that into a day, but just a suggestion, there may be some room for growth there with an event that's 13 years old. The other thing that I might suggest is I think that the event managers and the folks who put this on have a great sense of what their community is. It must be a wonderful event. I haven't attended, but you can tell it exudes from the application. Nevertheless, I know that our demographics are shifting really rapidly in Nebraska. And I just wonder if the inclusion of the word Christmas is necessary for this. I know that we've got quite a few people in Nebraska that's not the holiday that they celebrate anymore. So I just wonder if there could be some examination of moving forward to grow that event. Is that word necessary, or does it become a little bit exclusionary for some folks? I don't know. That would be up for the event organizers to figure out. Those were my only comments.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And Peter, anything else to add?
The smallest possible comment. As I was going through it, I recognized that at one point, this event was to take place on December the 2nd. And at another point in the application, it was to take place on December the 3rd. This is just a question of proofreading. And it made me at the time wonder if perhaps some language was being recycled from a prior year. I'm not opposed to recycling. It's a very small point. I also found at first, I was a bit confused as to exactly how many artists were going to be hired, but by reading carefully the language of the application and then also looking at the budget, that turned out not to be a real issue. So I thought this was a very strong application.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further discussion on this applicant? Okay, then I think we take a couple minutes if you guys have any adjustments or updates you want to add to your reviewing online. Then we'll move to the next one.
And if you're not going to make any changes to scores, if you can give me a thumbs up or just any sort of indication you're done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, next one.
Wonderful. So next we have the Asian Community and Cultural Center, the 2023 Harvest Moon Festival. This NAC grant will help pay for performances from 10 to 12 groups who will perform at the 2023 Harvest Moon Festival at the Lincoln Antelope Park Bandshell on September 30th, 2023. It will help to cover the cost of materials for the activities, which include a balloon artist, face and henna painting, and bounce castles. They expect over 1,000 people from Lincoln and the surrounding areas to attend the festival.
Okay, and up first, again, we have Deb.
Okay. The Asian Community Festival is an important part of Lincoln's diverse community. The summary, once again, it was brief. I would, if anything, I would encourage them to use better, you've got a lot of space to better tell your story. The Asian Community Center is an interesting, unique program and organization in that their title is Asian, but they serve people from all over the world. So that's always been kind of an interesting thing for me. But the project description is clear. It talks about where the activity will be held. They have kind of hunkered into Antelope Park, which is also centrally located, and will probably allow a lot more people to attend. I know that is on directly available. That space is also directly available through public transport. The artistic merit is very diverse, and they talk about people from all over. And so it does provide a variety of experiences. The work samples were the work samples. When people give the primary work sample as Facebook, it can sometimes be challenging because you can't get to their pages. So I had to kind of do an end around to get to their page, but I was able to find it as well. And their secondary work sample about the was of the Taekwondo performance that took place last year. The administration bios painted a clear picture of who would be actually administering the grant. The project goals, I thought, were clearly stated. The evaluation, they might want to have further conversation with the Nebraska Arts Council, although they did paint a clear picture of what they want to do. I would encourage them to contact the Nebraska Arts Council about other methods of evaluation that might be more helpful to them in the future and assist them in telling their story. The planning process was there. I thought that the budget for the size and the scope of this project, the budget was very, very modest. They were very clear about what they wanted to spend, about how the total expenses, and also very clear about how the NAC money would be spent. They painted a clear picture of Lincoln and the community demographics and also the changing demographics. They made a clear statement about the impact. The underserved community outreach and the partnerships are clearly evident. Their outreach and engagement was strong. It's completely accessible, it appears to be. That's about all I can say about this application. I thought it was well presented.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Chris.
Thank you, Ellen. Yes, I agree with Deb that this is a well-presented application. One of the things that I also agree with Deb on is that I would like to see perhaps a little bit more time presented in the introduction, project purpose. I'm familiar with this event. I know that it's gaining a lot of steam, and it's a wonderful event, a very well-respected event, not just in Lincoln, but as Deb said, around the state and around the world even. And I'd like to see a little bit more of sharing of that in in those introductory efforts, telling that story is very, very important, I think. But I think that the artistic quality comments that I have would be that I think that the program is spot on in its purpose and execution. I think it's very effective as an educational celebration of culture. I think it definitely brings community together, and you can see that reflected in the application. And it's evolving as well. And I particularly liked to see the inclusion of the First American dance this year. That's just an example of how the event is growing and embracing more cultural diversity. And I think that as far as the artistic merit of the event goes, it doesn't get much better. You look at the bios of those artists, and they are clearly top notch, every single one of them, and some of them recommended by the Nebraska Arts Council from that list. So I think it's nice to see that pulled from. As far as planning and evaluation, I agree. I think that there is a plan in place, and it's a good mechanism with event surveys, but I'd like to see a little bit more creativity, perhaps some innovation that's included in developing ways to evaluate not only the event itself, but the processes that go into the planning phase. Be nice to see a little bit of discussion regarding that, because the two certainly go hand in hand. The budget, I thought, looked very effective. As the event matures, I certainly would like to see more sponsorship development for such a wonderful event from within the community. I think there's probably opportunity for that. Outreach and engagement, I think that the audience development has been very good. And once again, the addition of other more multicultural or cultures of distinction into this event shows that audience development is taking place. It's been a good, wonderful run over that 8-year period. Underserved outreach, I think, is also strong. Access and accessibility. I guess the only thing that I would offer on that is that, make sure that we're always asking that question, who are we not potentially covering with this event? Who have we not thought about? Are there things that we may need to do a little bit differently? Maybe folks with physical disabilities. I know that doesn't mean they're disinterested in dance, or that there might be ways to include them in the dance. And particularly with an event like that, like this, it would be nice to see some of those things. And finally, I think the letters of support were very well written. I think they were very authentic, and they were very powerful in their depiction of how this event actually grows community and builds better human beings. So that's all that I would have in my review.
All right, thank you, Chris. Peter, do you have anything to add?
Actually, I don't. This is a wonderful event, and the fact that they've reached out in our Lincoln refugee community to many other of these small clumps of folks who have emigrated, beyond the Asian, which obviously came out of the Vietnam War years. That's just very, very positive. And so I was very pleased with this.
Okay, thank you. Roxanne, anything to add?
Apologies, my dog is barking, so I may have missed a few. Sorry if these are repeats. I thought it was a great application. The artistic quality was demonstrated with bios, and several of the artists are repeat visitors, which suggests they were popular.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further discussion?
Sorry, Ellen.
Oh,
Sorry, I was just
sorry.
trying to deal with my dog.
Oh, sorry.
Drawbacks of working at home. I also noted that the program project evaluation could use some work. Like, I thought they could include questions that address the artistic or cultural performances in the survey. And I may have missed it, but I didn't think the timeline included anything about the artists. And the other thing under planning and evaluation, I thought that I agreed the budget was modest. They did a lot with their budget, but I thought the artist fees were a little low, especially considering these were groups of performers. I thought the outreach and engagement was great. I did wonder, because I didn't know the area, the partnership, I didn't identify any arts organizations, and I wondered if there were any arts organizations in the community for them to partner with. And the letters of recommendation were good. So that's what I had to add.
Okay, thank you. So any further discussion for this applicant?
I would just mention one thing, which is part of a broader issue that comes up in these. Quality is a difficult issue to measure here because the groups are from within the local communities and are important to those local communities. So in that sense, they are very important. But if you were to put them on a quality scale that runs them against national or international measures, they're not superstars that way. And that will be coming up again in a few of the other applications.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, give you a quick moment to make any updates in your online application scoring portal. Give us a thumbs up when you're ready to move on. Okay, I think we're ready for the next one, Rachel.
Great. So next up, we have the Kearney Area Community Foundation. And this is for the Kearney Cultural Partners Family Arts Festival. On September 10th, 2023, the Kearney Cultural Partners will present the second annual Family Arts Festival at Kearney's Harmon Park. They are building upon the success of the inaugural event, which happened last year, and their goal is to attract over 1,000 attendees with a variety of arts activities and performances. In addition to activities from each of the cultural partners, of which there's 22, there will be performances from the String Beans, from an exhibit from the Edgerton Explore It Center, and the Native American dancer and singer, Garen Coons.
Okay, and up first we have Chris.
Thank you, Ellen. Yes, this is a pretty impressive array of artists. When you look at these 22 partnerships, and they cover just a very wide gamut of genre and interests. I felt I'm very familiar with many of these partners, and I'm also very familiar with the event organizers, the officers of the event, if you will. They're all very highly qualified, and I think that they'll continue to deliver just continued growth in a super high quality festival. I would like to see perhaps a little bit more intentionality in seeking out Kearney or Buffalo County artists to participate, much like what was just referenced, a comment earlier. When you can pull in those artists from a community, it just adds that level of relatability to the event that you wouldn't have if you just always relied on artists that you brought in from outside the community. And I think that might be an opportunity for this group to explore a little bit more. It's hard to argue, though, against the quality and variety of art and artists that are involved for this community event, certainly. So I think the project description is very clear. Certainly it this is quality programming. The work samples reflected that. I think the artistic merit is also very, very high. And the qualifications of the artists involved in this project are very, very strong. So I think that warrants a high evaluation. Regarding planning and evaluation, I think that the goal of exposure and developing community arts appreciation are very clearly articulated, and at least I felt that was what this festival is about, is exposure and developing arts appreciation. And I think that's clearly articulated. And it's also outlined in what I think is pretty meticulous planning. I think that's somewhat to be expected because you've got some very seasoned leaders who are coordinating this festival, and you can tell. I think that this group deserves some significant kudos for bringing together just a super large and varied body of arts organizations to participate. 22 organizations can't be easy to coordinate or manage, especially at the level that this is being done, and then aligning that into one festival, I think is pretty impressive. I also attribute that to probably the experience and longevity of the officers in charge. So that brings up a question that I have. Is there a succession plan in place? I know that this is only in its second year, but is there a succession plan in place for these arts executives who are involved in this at a very high level, so that this event can be sustained and continue to grow in the fashion that we believe it probably can? Regarding the evaluation of this event, it seems like it's most solely based on attendance, which, the event's only 2 years old, so that might be expected. However, with the depth of experience of these organizing officers, I think that maybe it's already time to take a deeper dive into this and say, okay, what are the things we really need to be evaluating here? Is there community change that we're taking a look at? Is there, or is it just a more base level appreciation, or is there an opportunity here to grow this thing, maybe from an education standpoint? And so I just wonder if the event's early success won't allow for maybe that deeper evaluation. I think the event is powerful for the size of the budget that it has. Once again, I think that when you look at the organizations that are involved and the experience level of the officers responsible, I think I would like to see a little bit quicker expansion of community support through things like sponsorship and outreach. Regarding outreach and engagement, I think I rated this very high marks across the board. I think audience development seems to be aligned with the goals of the event. I think that the event reflects Kearney well and surrounding area. Kearney is a very arts-oriented hub for this part of Nebraska, and I think that's reflected in this festival. I think that maybe underserved outreach, it could take some time to examine, especially early on in the event's lifespan, what that actually means for Central Nebraska and Kearney. When you look at Kearney, it's not, it's I guess fairly average if you want to use that Central Nebraska city when it comes to demographic breakdown, particularly from a racial and ethnic perspective. But that might mean that the onion needs to be peeled back a little bit further regarding what that means, accessibility, and particularly when we talk about underserved markets. There might need to be some more introspection and intentionality. I used it, for example, when I was taking my notes of perhaps there's a veteran population that might need more attention dedicated to it. Or perhaps there's an LGBTQ community that could use a little bit of thought process and intentionality involved when the festival is being put on. I think that the outreach and accessibility portion are fairly covered because the event's free to the public. Certainly would like to see that remain. I think as a great reviewer, I would like to see it remain free and open to the public, but it might be difficult to do that unless those sponsorships are expanded and the crowd continues to grow. The letters of support are fairly strong, but one of the things that I noted in the strength of those letters is that one of those letters, I think, actually comes from one of the organizers or current officers. That's not, it certainly doesn't disqualify an application, but I'd love to see letters from maybe some of the participants, just average citizens who have gone, and to talk about the impact of the festival on their lives. And maybe that could be cultivated a little bit better on the day of event, or even, some outreach in surveys beyond the day of the event, especially as the event matures into its second, third, fourth subsequent years. But all in all, I thought a very strong application. I'm looking forward to seeing this event in person. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Peter, anything you'd like to add?
It's hard to follow Chris. He's really very good. Chris and Deb are setting the bar very high in my first year doing this. I'm actually just looking at my comments, and I will say that, for instance, I would reinforce what Chris had to say about the performers. They're excellent, although one would not say that they're specifically important to the community as we look at the rubric, but they're going to be important to this activity. The kind of entertainment they bring is absolutely appropriate. The string beans, kids band group, and the Native American performer, and so on. So yeah, it would be interesting to see them try and reach into their community for some people. Yeah, actually, the comments about evaluation, I think we're going to hear a lot of this. There's a lot of head counting, and there's head counting here. And yes, certainly some more can go on. And frankly, I think they also need to talk to us as we read their grant about their sense of how much further this can grow in the Kearney community. It is, as so many of these communities are in Nebraska, not large by Lincoln, Nebraska terms, and quite isolated. And so, just how they might want to grow or even be more inclusive might be interesting to see and to put into their description of how they want to evaluate. Yeah. I mean, 22 organizations for a town of Kearney size. If this isn't everyone appropriate, it's very close. So I really admire that and the deliberateness of their effort to be as inclusive as they can. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Deb, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yes, I agree with both Peter and Chris. You guys are a tough act to follow on this one. My only concern is that looking at the demographics, I would encourage further outreach. I do know that Kearney has a huge Brown Latino community. I kept looking for that input and that outreach, and I didn't see that. And to know that many of these communities are struggling in transition, and many are having concerns with inclusion. And I know that in many of these communities, those folks feel marginalized. I would encourage the outreach. It's an incredible opportunity for inclusivity. It's an incredible opportunity to grow this event. I too am impressed with it being such a short thing. I'm glad to see that the string beans are still out here kicking it around. And I know that they'll bring some energy to this project. However, with an event this size, I see the lack of commitment to that particular community as a very, very big missed opportunity. I think the evaluation could be further explored, but it is their second year. And once again, the Nebraska Arts Council has all kinds of ways to assist or maybe even suggest them different ways of evaluation. So I would encourage them to, Rachel, I'm gonna have everybody calling you. But I would encourage them to reach out. Other than that, for 2 years, yeah, it is an impressive roster of partners and things that will happen. But that was a pretty big red flag for me.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Roxanne, anything additional?
I guess I had a few questions about the planning and evaluation. And I think this goes back to what Chris talked about earlier. the idea of succession planning. I just felt that the timeline lacked details and responsible parties. And I think that for a project this big, that it's really important to have specific tasks designated. And I guess the other piece that I didn't really understand is what the members' organizations are responsible for at the event. I assume it's, they set up their display and they do their hands-on activity, but do they have any role in planning? And obviously they promote it, which I think is great. But yes, I think because it's in the second year, there's probably a few growing pains that they're dealing with. The other thing to me was about outreach, and they talked about reaching the surrounding area in central Nebraska. And I was just curious, I guess I would have liked to have seen a little more description of that area, especially as it relates to underserved. Is it, because it feels like it could meet that remote rural community definition, but I don't know. But overall, I thought it was a really impressive effort. And I loved, the hands-on activities and the partnerships with this application. Oh, I did have a question, Rachel. I think this is for you. It noted that the two main artists are on the touring roster. Can you explain what that means?
Absolutely. So here at the Nebraska Arts Council, we have artists that apply to be on our touring roster. And if they are on that roster, then the applicant applies through that grant category for those artists. So I think there's a couple actually in this pool where you're going to see a note that you won't see the artist fees on the arts project grant budget because they're applying through that other category. And you can't apply, you can't apply for that same thing twice.
Got it.
So that's why they mention, these are the artists we're using, but you're not going to see them in that budget because they're applying through another category.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, one more question about your roster. Is it vetted, like they have to meet certain qualifications?
Yeah, so it is a panel process also.
Okay.
We have a panel that approves artists or not. And so they go through a vetting process to be a part of that panel or a part of that roster.
Super. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Roxanne. Is there any further discussion on this one?
Just one more quick comment based on what Peter and Roxanne's and Deb's input particularly. As this event looks to expand, I do think it's going to be critical to reach out to the Latino community. You've got some smaller communities, including Lexington, Shelton area that's closer to Kearney than what Grand Island is. But if you want to expand out, to Grand Island, that's probably just not going to happen unless there's something that brings in that Latino community, which is very, very strong in all those communities that I just mentioned. So if anybody is on from this particular organization, I would suggest strongly that take a look at that if they're going to grow that event second, third, fourth year.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Anyone else? Okay, we'll give you a moment to update any of your comments. Give us a thumbs up when you're ready to move on.
That's everyone, Ellen.
That was everybody. Okay, sorry, I was missing one of them. All right, thank you, Rachel. Let's move on to the next one.
All right, our next application is from Lincoln Crossroads Festival, and this is for the Nebraska Crossroads Music Festival. This grant request will be used to help underwrite expenses, which include musicians' fees, travel, lodging, production, and marketing of the 4th Nebraska Crossroads Music Festival. The organization has recently rebranded. They used to be known as the Lincoln Crossroads Music Festival, and they are now the Nebraska Crossroads Music Festival. And this change reflects the expansion to include a grand opening on August 4th at the Gene Leahy Mall in Omaha, with the remaining 2 days and 10 performances in Lincoln on August 5th and 6th.
Okay, and up first is Peter.
Sure. I I'm not going to be as crisp as previous principles, but my comments first about artistic quality is that this is, frankly, an extraordinary event, and brings in artists of national and international importance. They, in fact, say in their application they want it to be the best musical performance in the summer that is available to musicgoers anywhere in the United States. I don't know if they hit that standard, but it gives you an idea of where they're shooting for. And indeed, there will be a premiere of a commissioned work that was co-commissioned with Lincoln's Symphony Orchestra and the New York Philharmonic. So there is a great deal of ambition here, but actually, in all sincerity, a high quality. The principal artists are not from the Lincoln and Omaha communities, so in that sense, they're not locally important, but they are very strong indeed. So I think in most respect, the quality of the programming and of the artists very high. The specific importance of the artists in particular, specifically to the community, is not so much there, but not perhaps relevant to what they're attempting to achieve.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Chris,
Okay.
you're up next. Oh,
Sure.
were you
I keep
finished?
going
I'm
on,
sorry.
but
Okay, go ahead if you've still got more.
I just wanted to make, if I might, maybe I've taken up too much time, but I think it's important to understand that although they speak in their application of reaching out to local communities whose narratives are missing from public discourse, that is to say Rwandan, Cuban, Lebanese, and so on, they're not going to be presenting the music of those communities, but they're looking for this kind of hybrid cross-cultural blending of things. This is like Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road project. And in respect to goals and planning and budgeting, it is of the highest caliber, at least in my estimation. But they do have 2 full year-round half-time planners for this. A very large budget of over $750,000, and so it's a very big enterprise altogether. Different order of magnitude, I think, from most of the other things we're seeing. And I won't go on except to say that in respect to underserved audiences, I don't see that as strong as they might believe it to be. Outreach means going to Omaha. And the letters of support I would give no credit to whatsoever, because they aren't really letters. Perhaps that's too harsh. They're video clips and other things like that. So I'll stop.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Chris, go ahead.
Yes, I got to echo some of the same thoughts that Peter had. I mean, first I'd say that this is, as far as our artistic merit and quality, it's off the chart. Nobody can really argue that. I found it interesting in the purpose statement. I don't quite understand in those initial comments, and I quoted it because I think that the event organizers might want to take a look at this particular statement, just because I didn't fully understand what they were trying to share. And I'm going to read it as it was written. It states, quote, "We will achieve cultural understanding within the local community when cultural difference is not celebrated and made an integral part of the state's identity," unquote. So I just wondered if they were trying to share that there wasn't an appreciation or a celebration of those cultural differences currently, or lacking from the state's identity, or if they were trying to state something else. But I think that could be phrased clearer in different words. So I think maybe taking a look at that. There was also a comment, and I think it's a little bit premature, where they said that they moved away from multilingual print material after 4 years because COVID. And I think that might be a little bit premature for an event that's trying to be as diverse as what they profess. I mean, COVID they didn't have much success with it, I guess, early on, and then COVID happened, and maybe that's why they've decided not to do that. But there's other ways to try to re-examine that, because if you're definitely trying to have this be a celebration of cultures, I think there needs to be some reflection of some type of multilingual element to this, and I guess I would ask them to take a look at that. Planning and evaluation, I thought, looked pretty good, although I will share that in a budget this size, as Peter said, I think that there's probably more room in a budget this size to gain efficiencies than in a much smaller budget where you're just kind of scrapping by. So I would encourage this organization to really look for efficiencies in that budget of $250,000 to try to figure out what that, and call those out as efficiencies maybe. Outreach and engagement, I think that it's there. Certainly, accessibility, all those things seem to be addressed, at least in the words of the grant application. Letters of support, I agree. Once again, I would like to see something stronger with an event of this magnitude to talk about the impact of what's going on people's lives. I'd really like to see that, so that it moves it more from just an event of entertainment and celebration, but to a level of impact that I don't necessarily feel like I got from reading through the grant application. And that's all I have, Ellen.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Deb, do you have anything you'd like to add? Oh, you're muted.
Peter and Chris nailed it. Your comments, Peter, from an artistic standpoint, I really appreciated that input from someone who lives and breathes music every day. Chris did. I'm glad. I'm really happy how you framed that comment. I too struggled with that, and you did put it in context. And the underserved and outreach, quite often that can be wordsmithed, but it has to be authentic. So that was the only thing that I also had concern with. It is a huge project. I know that the evaluation could be stronger. There's lots of different things that people can do and use, and that's where I'm going to leave that.
Okay. Thank you, Deb. Roxanne, anything to add?
I might just have a few comments about outreach and engagement. I think, Chris, I also noted something about the bilingual concert information, but it seemed like they replaced that with a different strategy, which was sort of using ambassadors to connect with people in that community. So I felt like while they were taking away that bilingual piece, which hopefully they, may add again, that they were still trying to reach a bilingual community with a more sort of targeted approach. That was my take on that. And I also noted that, they chose to focus on the impact on the community with their audience members instead of letters of support. And I just felt like one thing that was maybe not so strong here was they weren't really engaging with local organizations in like a programmatic way. It was mostly in presentations, the presentation of the project. And this is just a curious thing for me. I wasn't totally clear on why they have moved to a second city. That wasn't totally clear to me. Can anybody answer that?
I felt that it might be, Roxanne, and this is just speculation, but I thought it just might be a market opportunity for them.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
And-
I would say it's ambitious. I mean, in a good sense, they want to grow. And I think they've wrung everything out of the Lincoln community that they can. To bring this level of artists just to Lincoln it's kind of a curiosity. Sharing with Omaha, a much larger market, is clearly the place to go with this sort of thing.
Okay. It could be a good or bad thing, I guess.
Roxanne, I understood that. And my question was, why are you moving it from Lincoln as well? But then I kind of parsed that out in my head only is,
Mhm.
that we do have a brand new mall. It's the shiny
Okay.
new Kenny in Omaha, but it also left me lacking because there's so many arts organizations. You've got one of the largest actually the largest arts organization literally across the street from here. So more letters of support from that and more clarity about the specific outreach in Omaha,
Mhm.
because this is, in terms of, there's a lot of people that would have loved to participate in something at this level. So that always leaves me a little questioning why, and if those efforts were made, please clearly state them, and if not, why?
Right. I mean, I think they have the capacity to do it. It's not
Oh,
a
yeah.
capacity issue. It's just sort of,
Yeah.
how does this relate to the outreach and engagement piece
Yeah.
for me?
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion on this one? I'll give you a moment to make any updates that you need to. Give a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay. Rachel, is this a good time for us to take a 5-minute break?
Absolutely. Let's take a break. Let's come back at 10:10. So 10 after. So if you would turn off cameras and mics so we don't hear random noises, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Deb, do we have you back?
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, Sam, you can go ahead and take that down.
Okay, welcome back. And we'll have Rachel kick us off with our next applicant.
Great. So the next applicant is Native Omaha Days Organizing Committee, and the project title is Native Omaha Days Festival. And this grant will help pay the artists who perform during the Native Omaha Days Festival, which will be held July 24th and end on July 31st. They estimate 30,000 people will participate in family reunions, class reunions, fraternity, sorority concerts, and other social gatherings that are held during that week.
Okay, and Deb, we'll have you kick us off.
Okay. This application is for a very important event. This is an event that's been taking place for a number of years in the North Omaha community, and they are requesting funds to pay artists who will perform during the Native Omaha Days Festival. They plan to employ a blues artist to perform. They do give information on the artistic merit. However, no artists have been selected yet, and I would like to have known more beside you two about the process that you will use to select. While this is an incredibly important event that lends economic development to the community, brings thousands of people back, has an economic impact on the greater community just by strictly sticking to what is in the application, which is all we have to go on, not just my own personal experiences with this, having attended this event. The brief summary is very brief. In fact, it's too brief. You have 500 characters to tell your story. If you are requesting funds, you have to make a really, really clear case for funding. And in terms of use of NAC funds, once again, 193 characters, and you had an opportunity of 250. You've got to tell your story. I think this is an application that assumed that people might know of the event or have prior knowledge of the event, but In my practice, I've always told people, write to a woman in New Jersey who has never been to Omaha, that you can paint a more clear picture of exactly what you will be doing. And in that, presented struggles for me personally. As I said, having not only been involved with the Native Omaha Planning Committee several years ago, it's been a few years since I've been off of this, and the impact of this bringing thousands, and not only just in North Omaha, but as I said, people are all over that. Convention and Visitors Bureau, all of those people come together. This is a huge thing. In the writing, I would discourage the use of acronyms, because once again, that woman in New Jersey doesn't know what NODC is, doesn't know what all of these things are. And we do have a panelist who is not from the state, but we have panelists who are from the state and live here in Omaha. But if you've never attended, the use of acronyms, especially when you've got the real estate in that box to further explain, does help. More clarity about the process for selection. This thing is coming up on us in July. I would hope and assume that those contracts would be in place, at least have an idea of, talk about the artists that you plan to employ. And, your application is your plan. What happens actually will come out in the final event, but your plan has to be clear, because you're asking people to make an investment in this. And I think that there might be some assumptions that people do know. I also feel like in some instances, the actual question that was being asked was not the answer that was provided in terms of artistic merit. It does talk about why this is important to the community. It goes into it, but more about how it brings together, more about it as a family-focused, family-centered event, more about how vendors and others will benefit economically from this, more about the economic impact of this event on this particular community. And not only that, discuss the longevity, but also discuss, as Peter and Chris and Roxanne, and I know that the Arts Council does, talk about the succession. This is an event that's been going on for a long time. What are your plans for? Are you bringing in new, younger people? Are you, exactly what is your outreach? The outreach outside of the community was not clearly stated. Work samples, there's so many incredible things. And I know that they work with incredible documenters. So to talk about that would have really assisted, because there's a lot of stuff out there about this fair and festival. In terms of the goals, I wish that they had been more clearly stated, because a project like this, with this longevity, it's time, in terms of strategic planning and in terms of that impact, to maybe just be more clear about that and to give a little better snapshot. Project evaluation was one that I also struggled with when they said we will use geofencing and Eventbrite. To talk, Eventbrite is more of a ticket selling mechanism. Geofencing, go into, I don't want to provide a lot of information about what I know about this. I'm going to stick strictly to what is written, but to talk about, there's an assumption that everyone knows what geofencing is. But to also talk about how will you further use that in your evaluation? What will those drones tell you? What will that information give you in terms of something that you can use, not only for next year's planning, but also for your final event, your final project, when you're going to have to talk about the impact of this event? The budget does show the artists. There is and if the artists are going to be paid this money and you don't know who you're hiring, please, just state that this is the average cost of a blues musician. The programming impact. How is your programming responsive to the community's needs and interests? Celebrated by many Native Omaha Days Festival, by many Native Omaha's Festival shows the deep ties that bind the city of Omaha's African American community. How? When? What? How? What is the lasting impact of that? So I would like more information in that, because this is a huge footprint. The impact is huge. Promotion, visit any CVB. I know that's Convention and Bureaus, Visitors Bureau, but someone else might not. Once again, the use of acronyms. Underserved community outreach. All are welcome, but the primary has been the African American community of North Omaha. That could be much, much, much further expanded to talk about that. And there's nothing wrong, with a grant being clear focus, in fact, being laser focused, and that's fine. But to talk about what other outreach and the LGBTQ plus communities. Someone else brought up other organizations and other entities, but there's an opportunity, I think, in there that to further explain the impact of it that was missed in terms of community partnerships. Once again, the use of acronyms, NODOC, Omaha Market Economic Development Corporation, the Empowerment Network, Native Omaha Club, and dozens of community partners. Be more clear about that and talk about what their role is, because I know that each one of them does play a very important role. Outreach engagement, artists working with schools. I had to look up whether or not Omaha Public Schools will not be in session during this time. So I would like a further explanation about that. And once again, just give us a little bit more to, we want this application, as we do all of ours, to be more clear, to make a sound case for funding. And we want them to have the best opportunity for success, but it can become a challenge when you don't provide that information that helps make that sound decision that is so supportive of something that is this very important. I'm clearly struggling with it because I know so much more about it, but I have to make a decision based on what we were provided. And I would encourage this organization to reach out for assistance. Nebraska Arts Council, if nothing else, is just amazing at that one-on-one that I know that they do. And maybe not even, but maybe not, just come in and talk to the folks there, and come in and contact them and see what other assistance might be provided. As I said, it's difficult for me because I know this is an amazing event. I know this is something that is necessary to this community. And every other year, people come from all over the United States. They come home. It's a homecoming. And the cultural significance of this is just huge, and it's grown exponentially, but you don't know that. So I'm going to leave it there. Okay. I support it in theory. I really do.
Thank you, Deb. Chris, have you got anything to add?
Just a couple of quick things I'll try to share. I do agree with Deb's analysis that there just wasn't enough meat on the bone for what I consider a legacy event, which has a rich history in Omaha, that homecoming. So I would too like to see a little bit more expounding on the successes of this event and how it has changed people's lives and what it means to them, not just economically to the community, but also from a philosophical perspective, I guess, is what I'm looking more for. I had kind of a significant issue with not really knowing who the artists were that were nailed down. You know, as Deb said, we're getting on the kind of the D-Day for the execution of the event. And I know that the event has a rich history of some very high artistic quality and high artistic merit, but that's not up for us to rely upon. It should be clearly articulated and shown in the grant application. I didn't feel like it was. The other thing that I would encourage this event to do is they did mention multiple times relying on that economic impact to the community, but I think there's more here that I'd like to hear about. I think that an event that is a legacy event such as this needs to really examine its purpose and see if that purpose can't be refreshed and directed towards that community building, and I'd like to see an articulation of that and what that looks like for this festival's role in North Omaha in that homecoming. I just didn't feel it articulated well in the application. An event that has been around this long deserves some attention to strategic planning and to asking the hard questions of what's our purpose here? Do we have an opportunity to do some pretty powerful things that we haven't done in the past? And so I'd like to see an exploration of that articulated in the grant application. That's all I really have on this one.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Roxanne, would you like to add anything?
I agree with what's been said. I would say for me, I thought the website, I did go to their website, and that was attractive and filled in some gaps that were missing from the application. But it didn't have details about this year's festival. And the work samples that were in the application, I did not think were professionally presented. So you really struggled with trying to assess artistic quality. For programming or planning and evaluation, we talked a lot about that. I did note that they had a planning document added and indicated there was a committee, and I think had they taken the time to put the committee structure and outline who's on the committee, that would have been helpful. And let's see. I just noted that clearly this event is targeted to an underserved community, and they really could have sort of expanded on that, and it would have been really beneficial to the application. So yeah, but it was hard to evaluate this one with what was presented.
Okay. Thank you, Roxanne. Peter, you have anything to add?
Sure, just a couple comments. First of all, I have a theory as to why we were offered this application, which is that it was intended exclusively to talk about or to elicit the money for the artists, and for no other purpose. And so it simply stepped aside from any broader description. That's a theory, because it certainly does so. The application speaks of one artist. The budget speaks of two artists, and that's never reconciled. I don't think that, frankly, we know who the target audience is. Is it the current residents of North Omaha, that vastly underserved population? Or frankly, is it those who are coming back to visit? The people who were on the outside returning. And the letters, although very supportive, very fine, point out the anticipated impact on hotels, airlines, and restaurants. It's an economic impact provided to those institutions, which may or may not actually be located physically in North Omaha. So yes, I think it was a frustrating application. I was trying to give you just now perhaps a vision of what was on the minds of the people who put it together. But I don't think that actually turns out to really be appropriate as a justification.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Is there any further discussion on this applicant? Okay, I'll give you a bit to make any updates and give me a thumbs up when you're ready to move to the next one. Okay, Rachel.
All right, our next applicant is North Platte Connect for their International Bazaar. And this grant will help pay the artists who perform during the International Bazaar to be held at the DNN Event Center in North Platte on August 20th, 2023. The event is open to all ages and free of charge. They expect 4,000 or more attendees. This celebration of diversity and cultures will present to the community of North Platte and surrounding areas with interactive cultural displays, live art performances, storytelling, global cuisine, and a children's corner.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Chris, we'll have you kick this one off.
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, I'm being out towards Western Nebraska, more central Nebraska, but being closer to Western Nebraska than folks on the east side. I'm pretty familiar with North Platte. Been out there multiple times for various arts things. And I was heartened to see this application because I do think that, at least in the project description, this organization has done a good job, I think, in creating an event with that has some quality programming. I think it was fairly well planned the first year, and I know that they outgrew their venue. I watched all the clips, the media clips that were involved and submitted with the application. And clearly it's an event that is growing. As far as artistic quality goes, solid project description. I think that the artists involved are strong. A lot of them are represented also on the Nebraska Arts Council traveling list. I think that's very good because, especially for a new event, to rely on that expertise to bring in quality artists is important. But I do want to add that an exploration within the community of local community artists is so important to an event like this because it adds that relatability. It exposes people to the idea and the notion that arts are for everyone, and you don't have to be an outside expert to participate in the arts. It gives the local artists a lot of exposure to the community that they wouldn't otherwise get. So I would encourage this event to do that. Can really help with community connection, understanding, awareness, but also that cross-cultural acumen. I noted in this application that it had some pretty strong goals regarding fighting racism in the community. And I think it's going to be important to get local artists involved in that if indeed we're going to handle that in North Platte, and we're going to meet that intent. As far as planning and evaluation goes, I think that the goals of the event are very strong. They're impactful, particularly the goal of, as it was listed, of eliminating or diminishing racism in the community via this arts festival. It's admirable. It can be very effective because art, we all know, heals and connects people. So I guess to that end, this festival is spot on. However, you've really got, and I know that this is a new event, but you've really got to mature that evaluation process if you're going to achieve a goal that is as powerful as what is stated. And we simply have to move beyond, being kind of overwhelmed and just counting the number of plates, I think, that was utilized for the food piece of this to determine, impact. There has to be a deeper dive into that, because it'll be real easy to slip into, okay, well, we doubled down on the size of the audience and we counted the plates. And so we can know that, that folks that showed up. I think it's important that that gets addressed now, because if this audience does indeed double again in their new venue, then it's important that in order to achieve that stated goal of fighting that racism in the community, then we need to have an effective evaluation system in place. I think that the planning for the event, they've got a timeline there. I think at this stage of the event's life cycle, it needs to perhaps mature a little bit more as the event continues to gain traction and grow. I think that the bang for the buck right now, this festival is really large, because it's a rather small budget for the amount of people that is served. That can be a springboard to deeper things, but it's going to be required that this group of organizers sit down and really analyze what that means. It's serving a lot of people right now for a small amount of dollars, but developing additional lines of revenue can be critical to the longevity of the event. But also it will include more people in the process. And so, but by its very nature of doing that, it's going to develop community better and potentially start to make some of those bridges across those racial divides that the community speaks to. I think to this point, the community, the organizers have done good work in the community. Now it's time to gauge, okay, what was the draw that first year? What's going to be the draw the second year? And what's our actual impact going to look like? Regarding outreach and engagement, audience development for this event, I think, is aligned with the community demographics. I think it is in sync right now with the event's goals. They have a pretty good understanding. The event organizers have a good understanding of the demographics of North Platte, the community. And I think they're responding accordingly to that. However, I do question the desire to reach up to 120-mile radius right now at this event, at this stage of the event's life cycle, because you almost got to stabilize what's going on there first before you can reach out, because those demographics look very different if you draw that 120-mile circle around North Platte. And that may change the very nature of what the event is predicated on. And I think that needs to be a discussion. I do think that the organizers have been diligent to reach an underserved population. Keeping the event free speaks to that. I do think that the accessibility is equally attended to. I did have a question that will remain unanswered. There was a mention of an LGBTQ room at the event. And I just wonder what an LGBTQ room is. And then how does that speak to inclusivity, or are we separating a population out? I couldn't get my head around that statement, what that meant with an LGBTQ room. I thought the letters of support were pretty strong, but as the event matures, once again, I'd like to see letters from participants that speak about how the event is changing their lives and what it means to them at that level versus, just kind of partners or video clips of the day or whatnot. Particularly when an event has such ambitious goals to really tackle some of the hard social issues that we see there in this part of Nebraska. And of course, budget wise, I'll always throw in that there's just so much room to improve community support in these events, particularly this event that we're talking about now. Early on, develop those opportunities for sponsorship, and it will go a long way to actually executing the mission of the event. That's all I have for this one.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Deb, would you like to add anything? You're on mute.
You nailed it. You expressed many of the things that I had, and having been to North Platte, I commend them for making this huge, immense effort, and sounds like it might be a nice party and nice event. I too struggled with the LGBTQ room. I didn't know what that was. You mentioned diversity so many times, and a pride room sounded a bit isolating. And so that raised a question. Also, the idea of a Spanish translator will be on site is a very passive way to offer diversity. I want to know, and then the next thing that they say is that putting up signages and cultural display with visual aids, will they be multilingual? Diversity and inclusion is used a lot in this application, but I would encourage them to reach out to that community, the Latin American community, and I see that they plan to use a particular organization to help promote the event. I would encourage them to invite that organization to the table, so that they can be part of the planning process. Because as Chris said, when you move that needle out 120 miles, is starting to look a little bit different. And it was clear that the food would be diverse, but the applicants, the people that would be taking part in the event need to be that as well. But Chris kind of said it all.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Peter, anything to add?
Actually, nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Roxanne, anything to add?
Just a couple minor things. I would say that the work samples were more promotional in nature, as opposed to getting a feel for the artists that are performing. And planning and evaluation, I don't know if I missed this, but I did not see a timeline for this group. It looked like it was just the sample in the document. And I also noticed, I think it's great that they're taking a survey. I think the evaluation process, I think someone mentioned this already, could use some work to kind of align with the goals. And then the other, this is maybe going to seem really picky, but as an outsider, the letters of support I noticed were not on letterhead and they were not signed. So I just thought that was a little unusual. I know a lot of things are done via email these days, but maybe they could have indicated that that those were sent via email. But I like the project very much. As I said, those were picky things, but I think it does provide an important event for underserved communities and all the things that have been said previously.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Oh, is there a planning? Did I miss that planning document? Because I did rate them lower because it wasn't there.
There's a document.
The Excel spreadsheet.
The first page, I'm trying to pull it up myself right now.
Okay.
I think it's after the first.
Is it okay? Maybe it was the second page that I didn't see.
Yeah, I think so. 'Cause the
Okay.
first page
Yeah.
looks blank, but then it's after that.
page
Okay, I
two.
guess.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take a minute to look at that because I didn't see that in my first review.
Okay.
Wait, I still don't see it. All right, I still don't see it, but I will.
So I think what it is, well, hang on. Before I say this for sure, I want to double check something.
Hmm.
Okay, you are correct, Roxanne.
Okay.
Because when I looked at it, I thought tab 2 was the timeline,
Yeah.
and it's really the example.
Yeah, I totally missed that too. I thought because the example is completely filled out. Now, as I look at it,
Yeah.
I guess I thought there was a blank one before it, and then there was the example that was filled
Okay.
in. So,
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. I think
We
you're
all did that.
making a sample. This is a sample, a model.
Yeah.
All
I think
right.
something about they said exhibition postcard, and I was like, what? That can't be right.
And the blank page threw it off for me
I
as
think
well.
Yes.
I do think it's
Yes.
important that there's a matrix that followed. So I appreciate Roxanne bringing that up.
Mhm,
So I did score them lower in that section.
mhm.
Okay, well, I'll give you guys a bit to make any updates that you need to. Let me know when you're ready. Okay. Rachel, next.
Our next applicant
Roxanne.
is Omaha Jitterbugs, and this is for the Cowtown Jamborama. There we go. Which is a swing dance and music festival. And this grant will help pay local musicians and local and regional teaching artists for their artistic services at the Cowtown Jamborama. And this event will take place at the Eagles Ballroom and Scottish Rite Hall, September 8th through the 10th. They expect to reach 400 community members, including local teaching artists, dancers, children, and families.
Okay, and Roxanne, we'll have you start off this time.
Okay. I noted that it was the event is a good combination of instruction, social dance, and music. That they have dance classes for all levels, from beginners to masters. I thought that recording the sessions and posting them was an interesting idea for people to revisit what they learned. And the Lindy Lab, which was something that was going to be held afterwards to practice what was learned, was sort of extended that sort of learning, which I thought was great. The corn eating relay sounds really fun, but I didn't think we needed a whole paragraph about it. It certainly builds community and is a fun aspect. That was probably my favorite thing reading about. And I said that the 2 artists that they've committed have impressive credentials and should increase the appeal of the event. I did think that the band could have been added to the bios because clearly it's a local organization and just adds to the artistic quality. Let's see. I thought their program that they uploaded was helpful in kind of understanding the structure of the event, but I did wonder why it went back to 2017 as opposed to something more recent. I sort of assumed that it maybe didn't happen during COVID. And I think the importance to the community was clear for dancers of this particular style. I think providing some data from previous surveys could have helped understand the makeup of the attendees. In planning and evaluation, I thought that the team of administrators is experienced with this event, and it seems like they have a pretty well-developed committee structure in place, which was good. I noted that this festival has a long history. I think Chris used the word legacy event, which I think is important. And I liked that they had volunteer hosts, safety allies, and a code of conduct for people attending. I thought that was really great. The description of the survey did not specifically include questions that addressed the goals of the Jamborama about dance. So I thought they could maybe do a little work there. And then in terms of outreach and engagement, I thought the statistics were a little old. They cite data from the 2016 census, and I felt like there could be more updated demographics. I also thought that they could have used a description of the venue or the neighborhood around the venue that somebody from outside the area could sort of have a better understanding of. I thought the Itsy Bitsy Jitterbugs was a great example of teaching the art form and developing audiences and dancers, and offering the scholarships to that group was really great. Programming impact, they focused on physical access, transportation, and financial barriers, which can be obstacles to participation. So I thought that was really good that they looked at those things. They mentioned that they're on a bus stop for the event. And I think the application made it seem like the organization wants to appeal to other audiences, but I wondered if they could think about programming, changing the programming to appeal to more diverse audiences. So those were my comments.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. Peter, anything to add?
Sure. I'd start by stressing that we've been looking at a lot of events that are very wide-reaching outward into broader physical communities and populations. This is simply a very different kind of activity that's being described. A very narrowly circumscribed group of swing dancers and enthusiasts in Omaha. They don't get outside of that very narrow little group very much. So we need to keep that in mind as we're evaluating. This is a perfectly appropriate kind of activity, but of a very different scope in respect to how it's is circumscribed. It is in fact indeed very expensive. A weekend pass is $210. Passes to other events are like $80, $75, $25, and so on. So that's, I think, important to mention. So importance to the Omaha community, not at all great. Importance to the Omaha's jitterbug and swing dance community, it's of the highest order. Evaluation, when you say surveys on site, on computers that are there on site, and later by email, so they're only being, they contact the people who are there, and they contact people who have contacted them. So again, it seems like a fairly narrow little group. I think planning and budgeting are fine, therefore measurable goals, not so much so in terms of how they evaluate. Audience development is mainly within, the dance community, and really only a small proportion of that. They do have what I think is an admirable and sincere statement about demographics and racial segregation in Omaha, identifying people of color as an underserved and underrepresented demographic in the swing phenomena. The one example of outreach they mention is very appropriate, the Pear Tree Performing Arts, but that is their only community partner so far this year. I will say, it appears that this organization does more than we're being told about. They refer to other kinds of events and outreach efforts across the calendar year, and it would be very good to have this event, this Jamborama thing, drawn into that larger picture, which may in fact suggest more ways in which they reach out beyond the narrow core of enthusiasts. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Chris.
Just two quick points. One, Peter mentioned the price point, which is rather expensive, but I also saw juxtapose that against a pretty well-developed, diverse set of revenue lines. So that may be an opportunity to provide even more scholarships with this event. I guess that's the point that I would bring up. Let's get some folks involved who may not have the resources to pay to come. And then the other thing that I would share about these legacy events is the ones that have been around for quite a while. It would be nice to see in those surveys, how are we using that data that we collect? Are we just calling it good to have the survey and that's it? What are we doing with that data? How do we change that event from year to year with that data set? Those are my only two comments.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And Deb, anything to add?
I mirror the comments that both of them made about the event. I did have concerns about the $210, how that might exclude many people. And my other concern was that in terms of outreach, I do see they did list Pear Tree performing. The primary focus of Pear Tree in the past, unless it's changed a lot, and I didn't see that change when I went to their website, is youth dance programming. These swing events are clearly for adults. And Omaha has an extensive dance community that is amazing. So I think that in terms of outreach, I would like to have seen something that extended beyond a statement, because there are incredible opportunities for outreach in more mature Omaha dance communities. And hopefully, although it wasn't clear, they do have, they're working with an adult population at Pear Tree. But knowing about Pear Tree and then going to their website, there was a bit of a disconnect for me. But other than that, I agree with everything everyone said.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Any further discussion on this applicant? Okay, I'll give you a moment to make any updates. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, Rachel, next.
Our next applicant is Operation Christmas Card, and this is for the North Platte Powwow. Operation Christmas Card, or OCC, hosts the annual North Platte Powwow. They feature Native American singers, dancers, and vendors who travel from across the nation to perform for their spectators. They also feature several Native veteran color guard regiments who lead healing ceremonies that take place over the 3-day weekend. They host between 650 to 1,000 national and international visitors. And this year's event will take place July 7th through the 9th. And the grant will assist in paying for equipment rentals and per diem for the participants.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, you're up first.
Thank you, Ellen. I must admit, when I first saw the event, the applicant, and then the project title, I thought that, wow, these things are so juxtaposed. I with the first American tradition of the powwow, and then the Operation Christmas Card, which, from a historical standpoint, there's some separation there. And then in reading the application, I saw that one is really fulfilling the role for the other. In spite of that juxtaposition, I think it kind of stems from the passion project of the founder, I guess, would probably be what drives that as I read it. Nevertheless, I think that, that the project description of the powwow piece of this fulfills, I think, exactly what the intentions of the event are, as stated anyway in the application, which is to celebrate and educate about Native American culture in spite of that juxtaposition. And I'm still struggling to reconcile that in my mind, but nonetheless, it's there. I think that exposure in our communities to this level of artistic and historical content is very limited just across Nebraska. Our indigenous population, our first American population, even as you head west, seems to rapidly be waning, and exposure to that is waning. So I celebrate this particular event, and I'm glad to see the application. I think it fills a great void in the North Platte area. I think that a word of caution is this is probably still a passion project of the founder. And that can be a little problematic because, once again, we talk about succession and those type of things. The artistic merit of the event is, I think, very high. Not only is the event, I think, vital for the community, I do think it's vital for the community. I think it's vital also to help build understanding of First American culture and preserving that culture. I'm familiar with some of the artists who participate in this. I've seen them before, and they are of very high quality. So I think that piece of this, from a merit perspective, is pretty impeccable, and they're very qualified for what's being asked of them to do. In planning and evaluation, I think that the goals are fairly well articulated, although I think that a deeper evaluation of those goals could be had when you take into account the growth of the event through the years, and moreover, the significance of the event to the community, but also to the surrounding area. The evaluation mechanism of the QR code, I think, is reasonable. Could be very successful. I'd like to see how that's been utilized in the past. Once again, I think a discussion on what the data collected looks like and how it is planned to be utilized into the future could be shared in this application, considering the amount of space, the amount of real estate, as Deborah puts it, that is being offered for the applicants to share that. I think it'd go a long way to telling, if the event is actually kind of analyzing what's going on, and also talk about the vision of the event for the future. I'm really concerned about the sustainability of the event, given the fact that, Native American culture, First American culture is so sparsely recognized and in continuity, and the fact that this does seem to be a passion project, and that founder continues to seem to be doing almost everything single-handedly. That's a little tough. I think recruiting a passionate and connected committee might help alleviate some of that strain, and probably could go a long way to securing the longevity of the event. I think the budget's reasonable. It contains some pretty diverse revenue sources, so the founder and the organizer has done a pretty good job of reaching out to the community and developing some of those revenue lines as far as the budget goes. I think that the event must have buy-in and support of the community, and that's indicated by those diverse revenue lines. As far as outreach and engagement, I think this is a strong event from what you can see in the application. I think there's been a pretty good effort to make the event more inclusive, to develop an audience that is fairly diverse in sharing cross-cultural learning, while preserving that goal of teaching about First Americans. The application made a reference to LGBTQ intentions. It didn't necessarily articulate a lot, but at least there's some thought process that's headed down that road. It's a powwow experience, and I guess, as I reflect on that, it kind of is what it is, because a big piece of this is preserving kind of that sacred piece of the culture. So there's not much you can do to tweak it one way or the other. It kind of is what it is, and I want to give deference to that. I think there is some underserved outreach. When we talk about the benefits to veterans and the Christmas card effort, I personally appreciate that there's an effort that's ongoing to reach out to that demographic. Letters of support. Once again, I would like to see more discussion and reflection of how the actual community of North Platte feels about this event. I think it would be nice to pin down some of those supporters that are obviously there. And maybe solicit some of the supporting letters this year intentionally for subsequent years. If this continues to be a request or an opportunity, go ahead and develop some of those out this year and give it some forethought. Don't just wait until grant time and then send an email saying, hey, we need a letter of reference for somebody, and start hunting it up then. Those would be my suggestions. I think overall, pretty good application. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Deb, comments to add?
Not much to add. I think Chris did a great job of just encapsulating, but I just became warm and fuzzy when I saw the QR code. This is just so simple, and it gives people an opportunity to participate actively in the comfort of their own home. Many people are, filling out a slip of paper at the end of an event is an exercise in waste of paper and futility quite often. So I was really happy to see that. I was also very happy when I saw Chris talked about kind of the push and pull of this thing. The Buffalo Bills Wild Show, I'm like, understanding the history of that and how that at some point might have been considered troublesome. So in terms of artistic merit, I was really happy to see that they had made the statement that this can contribute to healing generational trauma in a positive, creative, artistic light. That is an acknowledgement of what happened. It was done. We are making moves to improve what's going on now, and to not only that, but to share the information. My only thing was that a little bit immersive experiences where there's a demonstration, they can become very voyeuristic, where you're looking at them. It's almost like I think of an exhibit where you're watching. I have an example I'm not going to use, but I would encourage them that while you're showing what goes on during a day and I love the idea that people will have a chance to see what actually happens and what different processes and things like that, but to make sure that it doesn't turn into a voyeuristic experience versus an immersive experience. They provided lots of information. I thought they were really clear about what they wanted to do. And in terms of it being a new experience, I would encourage them to just continue. And, unless you're working with just one specific tribal community, to maybe outreach more. But other than that, I agree with totally what was said before.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Roxanne, anything to add?
I would just echo what Chris said about that this is a major project for one person to undertake, and I think it would be great to see a strong planning committee. And I did think that one of the letters of support kind of allayed some of my concerns about the organizer and, this idea of a, single person's vision. And, the qualifications for the organizer came through with that letter. And let's see, I think that was pretty much it. I did want to give them kudos because it was the first time that I saw any statistics on veterans from a community. And I thought that was really great, especially since there is a strong component of programming for veterans.
Okay. Thank you, Roxanne. And Peter, anything to add?
Yeah, it's a kind of comment with a question in it. It is my understanding that the powwow phenomenon is very widespread, and there are powwows frequently across the country during the warmer months. It's a little like bluegrass festivals, and there are fans who go from one to the other. There are performers who go from one to the other. It might have been good to, if I'm not totally mistaken about this, it might have been good to suggest how this might fit into a broader map of such events, and potentially, in fact, that kind of core of veteran participants might actually help every local community to stage these events. So it's something that occurs to me to think about, perhaps to ask about, perhaps to look for if this is at all valid, in a subsequent year's application.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this one? Okay, I'll give you a moment to make any updates. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready, and we'll do one more applicant before we take a break. Okay, perfect. Rachel, thank you.
All right. So our next applicant is Partners for Livable Omaha for the Omaha Mobile Stage Show Wagon. And it's specifically for dance night and Battle of the Bands. And this grant will help pay the event production crew and featured professional performing artists who will perform during 2 of the show wagon events, which will be held at the Jean Leahy Mall at the Riverfront on Dance Night, which is on July 8th, and Battle of the Bands, which is August 10th. They estimate 2,000 people from the greater Omaha Metro will attend these free public events. And these 2 events are part of a larger 11-event summer series, which they call the 2023 Youth Talent Show Wagon Series. That is a mouthful, just saying.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And Peter, we'll have you kick off this one.
Sure. This was new to me, but for members of the Omaha community, especially of a certain age, they will remember the show wagon phenomenon, which is being revived. And apparently, there's it stopped in 2010. It got picked up in 2022 after COVID, and so there are ways in which they're attempting to build on, folk memory in the community. I think that's great. Yes, these are, they are seeking funding for 2 events out of a much larger total. So it's good to know that, they're working out in communities, very specially chosen but local venues to haul the show wagon to. The Leahy Downtown Mall is, of course, not one of those. It's a central place in Omaha. They're hoping that these 2 events will, help build on Omaha's desire to make this a destination location for all members of the community. And so I see that all as very positive. And I'm also really keen on the fact that Dance Night and Battle of the Bands are about kids. These are local youth acts, 30 local youth dance acts, 15 local youth bands. There will be nationally recognized talent with Omaha roots that help draw audiences, but this is mostly staged around this kind of competition of local community members, children in the community. I think is very strong. So it's the importance to the community is very high. Quality and artistic qualifications, tricky, but I'm not troubled in the least. Let's see. Planning and evaluation, I was content with. Planning process seemed fine. Budget looked fine. Yeah, and they're looking for artist fees and some production personnel fees. Yeah, their goals are basically going to be measured numerically, that how many acts apply for each night and how large the audiences are. I think for the first time that they've gone to this size overall for the show wagon program, that's fine. As we've heard commented on by others, in previous grants. This is clearly an area that they want to keep an eye on and think about. But I don't think at this point, they're just getting their feet wet in something of this size. So many events and such large events with the judging contests and so on them all. It sounds to me as though they're doing a very fine job with outreach and engagement through the host organization, that's Showwagon, and its executive director, deep and long involvement with Omaha's network of arts-based nonprofits. They go nonprofits serving youth inside and outside of schools, the performing arts studios, the clubs, community-based arts instruction. All of this is very explicit. They have a marketing and communication team, and what seemed to me a strong plan for using print and social media and community arts calendars. So it sounded to me as though they are really doing that. The letters of support are current and enthusiastic, and they're from appropriate organizations. So I saw a great deal of strength across the board in this application.
Thank you, Peter. Roxanne, you're up next.
Let's see. It did take me a little bit of time to get my head around the Showwagon program and that these were two different events. And then you had the Team Siwa component. So it took a little bit, but I think it's, as Peter said, they're working with young people, which is great. The two sort of groups that they're bringing in, both have strong local connections, which I think will be important to the community. I love that they're reviving this Showwagon program after so many years. I think with planning and evaluation, I would just add to Peter's comments that I think it's interesting that they're using zip codes to collecting zip codes to sort of figure out which areas they're reaching, which I think is really smart. Let's see, I thought, I was just curious if they were serving participants in the showcase, like the youth that are participating, because I think that's an opportunity to gather some meaningful comments about the program. And the budget I thought was accurate and detailed. I thought that it was really great that the Team C was making such a big in-kind contribution to the event. As far as outreach and engagement, see, we talked about zip code collections. I liked that the Showwagon would be out in different communities, hopefully, generating some interest and participation in these showcases. So that was sort of built-in promotion. I did wonder if this is really successful, if they talk about registration numbers, and I was curious what happens if they actually exceed the registration numbers. Is it first come, first serve, or is there some sort of panel? That's looking ahead, but it could be an issue. I thought their community partnerships were really strong, and I liked that the local Omaha Girls Rock are being brought in to do some of the event management. I thought that was really excellent. And the Teen Advisory Board, setting that up and doing outreach, I thought was really a smart way to reach their intended audiences. So.
Okay. Thank you, Roxanne. Deb, what would you like to add?
I was looking for, I agree with the comments made earlier. And yeah, the Showwagon was an important part of Omaha community for a number of years. Outreach and engagement to the community, the immediate surrounding community, I looked and looked and looked for and wanted to see it, and I didn't. And that was uncomfortable. That's all.
Deb, do you mean the demographics for where the Jean Leahy Mall is?
The demographics for where Jean Leahy Mall is, the demographics in what's considered North Downtown is on the periphery of the Black community. And the person who has written the grant has actually run a nonprofit in that community. While the JoJo Siwa thing is huge, that she's still got this big, incredible following, and that's great. And I know that she is an inspiration, and particularly to a lot of LGBTQ plus youth. So I think that there's a whole lot of just unspoken value in that. And I do know that the Stages program does move around 2 different communities. I just was looking for something with this, and I troubled whether or not to take that into my scoring, because I look at this and this is a great project. But but outreach is very simple and it doesn't cost. So I was kind of looking for that.
I did have a note about asking about the demographics for the neighborhood, which I didn't mention. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Chris, anything to add?
I didn't have anything until Deb said something, and then I went back and I do want to, if multiple panelists see something, I think it bears saying so that the applicants can take a harder look at what they're doing. And I did go back and look at one of my comments on one of my only comments on outreach and engagement, and I'll just read what it says: is audience development is a little immature with this event. I thought maybe that could be to the newness of it, but I also said I believe the organizers are doing a good job to try to change that, but it would be nice to get more of the underserved population involved early in this event's history, and in doing so improve the outreach and accessibility at the same time. So I think that speaks to something that needs to be looked at early on in this event's history, is that let's build it the right way. Let's speak to the inclusivity early on. It'll be much tougher to get if we don't address it up front.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further discussion for this one? Okay, give you a moment to make any updates. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, and I think it's time for another break. Rachel, when would you like us back?
Let's do, is 11:27 too weird of a time? All right, let's do it then. 11:27 it is.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Great. Okay, Deb, do we have you back?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. And then I
Okay.
forgot to check last time. Stephanie, are you back?
I'm here.
Thank you. I was like, oh, well, that was nice of me to wait for the person taking the minutes. That's great. All right, Sam, you can take that slide down.
Okay. Rachel, we will start with our next applicant.
Great. Our next applicant is Skatefest Omaha. And this is for Skatefest Omaha events. And this grant will help cover artistic fees, contractual fees, marketing and publicity, and supplies for live artists and volunteers for 3 Skatefest events. The events will take place on July 9th, September 10th, and May 12th of 2024. They estimate 500 to 700 people from Omaha and the Midwest will attend each event.
Okay, Peter, we'll have you kick us off.
Sure. I'll actually start by saying the project is in the very first place. It's about skateboarding. It's not about the arts. And its primary mission is, quote, to push Omaha's skateboarding culture forward. That having been said, it wants to create 3 very attractive events which offer more than just skateboarding competitions to the Omaha community. They are quite clear that the goal is in part to engage, connect, and support the community. This is by providing food trucks, musical artists to play between competitions, and then across the site, which is usually a broader park with a skateboarding arena in it, they want workshops featuring visual artists, mural painting, things like that. And so they're looking for NAC funds to pay these artists, musicians, and youth creativity activities. So I think that's, they understand what they want to offer, skateboarding within what can be an attractive, larger context. No content deliverers are named. So I see these arts really as being adding to the events without really being integral to them. But they acknowledge the reasonableness of providing non-participant community members, especially families with children, something to do. I think the budget is realistic. I thought the planning process was fine. Measurable goals are quite specific and unsurprisingly numerical. The numbers of competitors who sign up, numbers of spectators to the competition, the larger crowd, of course, and then the total combined numbers of vendors, live artists, musicians, and creativity workshops. They don't, I think, have enough really about how they're going to count them. They just say they want to see those numbers and so on. So counting and more on evaluation would have strengthened the applications. Certainly more could have been said about who they want to attract outside of the skate community of folks who do this with such intensity and enthusiasm. And finally, I actually like the outreach and engagement effort they've made. They've been very deliberative about choosing 3 different spots, 3 different locations, which have skateboarding facilities, so that they're distributed throughout Omaha neighborhoods of varying demographics. And they give actually some fairly detailed comments about the demographics of each of those neighborhoods. And they single out individuals in these neighborhoods, and then more broadly that they're reaching out to underserved BIPOC and LGBTQ+. There are young upcoming artists, and to the extent that they can find them, specifically artists who also skateboard. I think that would be the gold standard. The outreach activities do not go beyond these festival borders, the park borders, but they are definitely suited for community partnerships and make the festivals more audience friendly, accessible, and attractive. Yeah. The letters are support are good from appropriate sources, the BFF and the Partners for Livable Omaha. But I will say that both letters are from 2021, and they respond to 2021 events, while this project is for 2023-24. So my comments.
Thank you, Peter. Roxanne, you're up next.
Okay. I noted that I think it's difficult to evaluate the quality of the arts programming when there's no committed artists. They do have a selection process, which was good. Some didn't. But it was unclear sort of who's reviewing that and deciding. I did at the same time like their approach of asking their followers to tag artists and to suggest them. So there was some process. And I was going to suggest that if they're going to continue to apply, they might want to start documenting the arts and the music components of these festivals for future applications. Because I didn't think the work samples were super helpful, I guess. And I think the project is important to the skateboarding community. I mean, I think there's definitely a culture that embraces art and design with skateboarding. For planning and evaluation, they do have goals about the number of artists and sort of more general goals about supporting creative communities, which I thought was good. And that they plan to take surveys. I think for outreach and engagement, I echo what Peter said about providing demographics about the specific neighborhoods. I thought was great. I think they do make a good connection between skateboarding, art, music, and creativity. And this has the potential to reach new audiences. And as Peter noted, they do are making an effort to prioritize underserved communities in the selection of artists. They mentioned that, and ideally would be skateboarders. I did like that they have a program to serve at-risk youth. And Peter, I guess I had a question. I didn't notice the date on the letters, but I noticed they were addressed to Amplify Arts, and I was confused about that. So, but I guess the date could play into that. So that's what I have for this one.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. Chris, do you have anything to add?
I would add just a couple things. I appreciate this application because it can be tough to get kids involved in the arts, and the opportunities for kids to engage with the arts in many cases are taken away from them before other things are taken away from them. And so I was intrigued by this whole skateboarding arts connection, and I must admit, I had to sit back and think about it for a minute. And then I saw the photographs of the kids painting their skateboards, and there is this genre of art that probably lends itself to skateboarding, to this graffiti art that is, quite a talent and quite a skill. And I just wonder if that could be better developed in this event. I know that the event's about skateboarding, but if we really want to provide this opportunity to kids to experience not only the skateboarding, but the art side of it, which is what we're connected to, maybe we get some folks in there to teach them that ups the artistic merit and the artistic quality of this thing, to get involved with those kids, because you can see their faces as they paint those skateboards, and it's pretty, the typical thing that you see when kids that don't get to engage in art actually do finally. It's like a light bulb goes off and they're just glowing, with that creative exploration. So I guess I would offer that I hope that these event organizers explore that deeper moving forward, and then articulate that in the grant application, because there's some impact there that I think we're missing in this application. And that's all that I would share about that.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And Deb, anything to add?
I'm familiar with this organization, and after reading the application, I agree it is difficult to measure artistic ability, although they did provide a brief description of how they would select artists. And having to think about how things are done now, the idea that this, they're using a different way to outreach, different method of outreach. And if they want to reach, I'm assuming that these things are being done this way because they are aware of how their target audience responds to marketing. So I'm going to give them credit for that. In terms of project evaluation, I'm going to come back to that because I would like to see them further develop that evaluative tool, because if they want to expand this program and they're going to be applying for additional funds from additional funders, they're going to have to narrow that down and be more clear about recording the having a positive way to seek the information that would make funders want to further invest in the future. So maybe just looking at something, just some more evaluative tools. And I know in the past, there have been links to, if not the rubric, but to resources available from the Nebraska Arts Council to assist them in developing that. Because crowd surveyors might be, how much are you going to get from crowd surveyors? To maybe explore for the organization, maybe to explore more of what's going to be expected and look at beginning with the end in mind. What is it that what type of things would be more valuable in terms of that? And in terms of the letters of support, I too was concerned, and Amplify Arts is a totally different arts organization. I have a theory about what I think might have happened, but if it's not concrete in this application, I'm not going to share it. But Amplify Arts is a separate organization, and it would benefit them to update those letters of support and to provide something that is not confusing, and to provide information that, as I mentioned earlier, that women in New Jersey will know that they
Or
are
Delaware.
Arts, that and we are fabulous and wonderful. And I happen to know personally of the impact of those kids and those skateboards and things like that. Those experiences are invaluable. This is a young new organization, and I applaud them for the steps they're making. In spite of being a grandmother, I see this as a risk management nightmare. But I have talked to in another event, in another capacity, I mentioned that to the director, and he just started laughing about it. He's like, yeah, you sound like my grandma. And I'm like, okay, take that as a positive. But I do know that those events, those measures are in place.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Any further discussion for this one?
I just wanted to jump in real quick. I looked at the letters, and the 2021, the way I'm reading it is that both of them attended the 2021 event, because like BFF says, the 2021 event was so refreshing to see. So the way I took it was they attended the 2021 event. Now, I do think these letters are for 2022, 2023. So they might still be a little outdated, but the way I read that 2021 was that they had attended that event or that year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Okay, give you a moment to make any updates. Let me know when you're ready. Peter, I don't know if I missed your thumbs up or if you're still
Oh, I beg your
updating.
pardon. I was
Okay.
reading along. Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I'm fine. My phone.
No problem. All right, Rachel, next one, please.
Our next applicant is TBD Dance Collective, and this is for Pavement, location 9. And this grant will help pay the choreographer and dancers involved in Pavement, location 9, an outdoor dance performance taking place at Millwork Commons on Saturday, August. Oh, there's not a date. Hang on. 19th. There we go. Based on previous Pavement performances, they estimate 200 people within Omaha will attend the event.
Okay, thank you. And Roxanne, you'll kick us off.
Sure. I thought this was a really innovative way to connect dance and outdoor spaces and reach new audiences. This is for artistic quality. The work samples were really helpful, especially the video showing how the dance happened outside in the space. I thought that it's important because it also supports dancers and choreographers in this area. And the choreographer, Shakir Jones, has strong connections to the community. For me, it would have been helpful to have a brief description of Millwork Commons in this section, just to get a sense of the location. I think I finally maybe clicked a link in a letter of reference to pull up Millwork Commons to really get an idea of what it is. For artistic quality, I did think that it would be helpful if there was a program or a discussion with the choreographer or the dancers at the performance, just to give them an opportunity to engage with the artists. Under planning and evaluation, I thought the program administrator was really experienced. The goals are measurable and the survey should gather audience data. And I thought gathering feedback from the choreographer and the dancers is important. It's less formal, but it is important to ask. And I liked that they included questions about stipends and compensation to keep, to make sure that they're in line with compensating artists appropriately. I did wonder if Millwork Commons is providing any financial support. It's clear that they're providing some marketing support. I was just curious about that. I think the budget reflects what was discussed in the application. The stipends appear to be modest, and the timeline shows an effective planning process. For outreach and engagement comments, I did note that I didn't see any demographic information for residents in the neighborhood. The program does engage, I think it reaches 2 people, or 2 groups. It's the movement artists as well as community members. And I mentioned the marketing. I thought the webpage with specifics for the audience about where the dancers are, the pathways to get there and the parking was helpful, because I did wonder, like, how does this happen? I thought it was cool. And I just wonder if it's available on site for the people that kind of wander in. And they do talk about the fact that this is available to the nature of this public outdoor performance makes it accessible to people who might not be comfortable going to a performing arts center, families, things like that. And I thought the letters of recommendation show that the community is involved in the project.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. And Peter, you're up next.
Sure. I think the artists are qualified here, and as an example of avant-garde, contemporary avant-garde dance, this has a lot of merit. it's going to be dropped into the Millbrook Commons community and be shaped around whatever the physical space there is in terms of empty lots or sidewalks or streets and so on. But I don't think it has any necessary connection to people in that community. Let's see. Yeah, I do find their goals to be relatively abstract. It's one in a series of pavement performances, which are about installations. They call these installations. It's a movement installation that activates the community space. And the one more specific goal, a clearly stated goal, is to provide a paid opportunity for a local choreographer. So I think creating the event and setting it up and doing it is their focal point, and not really thinking so much about outreach or impact. And yeah, I didn't see a budget. Should probably look at it again. I didn't see any budget at all for promotion or advertising or any sense of how potential audience members might be reached, other than through the Omaha dance community. I mean, even if there's a website, somebody has to tell people to go look for it. You do have to register in advance and pay for the tickets. And so anyone looking at this in advance might be put off if they're from an underserved or low-income neighborhood. They will not charge for passersby, which I think is, of course, perfectly natural. I don't see any further educational or outreach activities surrounding the Millbrook Commons choreographed event. So that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Deb, do you have anything to add? You're on mute.
What is it? I think that they both, I agree. And it is there's a push and pull between this particular area, as I brought up before, and the surrounding communities often being left out of. The idea that the $10 could be waived or could be lowered. There's a struggle, to be quite honest, going on between North Downtown and North. This is really North Downtown and North Omaha, and I do see signs and evidence of diversity and things like that, but it's a largely ignored component. And so, as someone else had said earlier, I think it was Peter, that I agree that more outreach to the immediate community might benefit. And in terms of outreach, it doesn't have to mean that, it's just a sharing of information. There are information systems that can be shared. And that way, there is a more feeling of welcomeness that includes that. And that's all I'm gonna say about this.
Okay, thank you, Deb. And Chris, anything to add?
Yeah, I would add that, well, first of all, it's, when you have experience with any of these organizations or entities that put on these events, it's hard to not connection to them, but experience with them. Sometimes it's hard to separate that out a little bit when you read these grants, but nonetheless, it also can be a good thing, because maybe I can offer some suggestions here that maybe others can't. TBD Dance Collective artistically, it's a very, very high quality delivery. That's been my experience artistically, very high quality. Nevertheless, when you just read through this application, you wouldn't necessarily surmise that. And I think that's part and parcel of why audience development has struggled for TBD. I think through the years, they typically have that 150, 200 group that kind of follows them around. And so I start to question, okay, what is the effort to develop that audience? You know, if it's been that same number for so many years for such a high quality arts organization, which they are, very, very good acumen in what they do. And then I go back to what Peter said. He said something like, I'll paraphrase Peter, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said it seems like there's more of an interest in just, you know, putting the event on than necessarily the outreach and the impact of the event. I juxtapose that against the fact that when you go to one of these performances, it is very, very, very compelling, albeit abstract. So it seems weird to me that, you know, the overall feeling is that, well, we're just, you know, it's just putting it on that matters. But in my mind, as somebody who doesn't dance and who has been to many of these performances, it's very moving, to use a word, you know. It's very moving, it's very powerful. So I see a huge opportunity here for TBD to expand upon that. And I'm disappointed that that hasn't happened throughout the years that I've known them. Because it is a very high quality delivery and it is very moving and powerful. So maybe there's some elements in there that Deborah spoke to that could be better developed, I think, in that outreach. The other thing that I would share that I think is a very positive part of this application is, you know, here's an organization that learned to do something during the pandemic that they're continuing to do, kind of post-pandemic, if you will. And there are a lot of organizations that did things during the pandemic, then just kind of left them by the wayside, albeit they were very powerful things, and just went back to business as usual post-pandemic. And clearly this is an organization that learned something was very powerful that they could do during the pandemic, and they've replicated that post-pandemic. So I felt very heartened by that. That's all I have to add.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any further discussion? Okay, give you a few moments. Let me know when you're ready. Okay, Rachel, next.
Our next applicant is Tri-Faith Initiative, and this is for the United We Walk, Uniting for an Inclusive Omaha project. And this grant will help fund musical artists during the Tri-Faith Initiative's United We Walk event on September 10th at the Tri-Faith Commons. They expect 3,500 individuals from across Omaha to attend. United We Walk unites people for an inclusive Omaha and will host a ceremony, walk, open house, and community fair. They'll feature artists throughout the entire event, and they invite participants to explore the Tri-Faith Commons, enjoy performances, and come together to advance equity.
Okay, thank you. And Deb, we'll have you kick us off.
I found this application to be a little bit of a challenge because I'm aware of the incredible work that they do. However, I felt like the primary emphasis is on the walk. I wish that there had been a little bit more information shared about the artistic inclusion of the artists. Now, I'm assuming that they will be part of the opening ceremony, but they also state that they will be involved in every portion of the event. Will there be artists, you know, at different points in the walk? Will there be, you know, I think further conversation about how, other than on the stage, if you're saying they're going to be involved in everything, how will artists be engaged outside of the stage performance? And if they were just in a stage performance, that would be fine. But the idea that they were that the applicant stated that they will be involved in all stages of the walk, it made it difficult. The idea that the artists are not selected made it difficult to define artistic merit. I'm assuming that, you know, if this is you started outreach to, you know, diversity, even when applicants, if you just list a couple that give an idea of where you're going with this, of the level of artists that you plan to employ. Although, it's very easy to state, we would like, and Kirk Franklin, I'll use him as an example, as a huge gospel artist. It's fine to say we would love to have Kirk Franklin. Well, that tells me that you're running a high-end event. And I'm not saying this is not, because this is a very well respected event in the Omaha community. But however, it did make it a little bit difficult for me to make a good determination of artistic merit. And they did go into an explanation of why it is not. I'm also going to, once again, project evaluation. They've sold 300 registrants to our walk, use clicker counters to count how many people we had to the mosque, utilize visual inspections to confirm participant engagement. That can be improved. And once again, I will encourage them to further develop that project evaluation so that they can more clearly state the huge impact that this has in this and future applications. The event is open to the public. I'm looking for words. Outreach engagement. Once again, that was a missed opportunity, I think, because they can talk about what they do, or even talk about the impact of that this walk has on their other programming. So by being an initiative that brings together people who otherwise might not be brought together to talk about outreach and engagement, that right there is a very, very big missed opportunity, I think. So I would encourage them to further describe it and do a more impactful job of telling your story, because some of these things are happening, and they're things that I know that have happened, but they're in my head and they're not in this application. So that doesn't count. But just encouraging them to do a little bit better job of talking about the impact and more emphasis on the arts, what the artists will be doing versus the walk.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Roxanne, you're next.
Deb covered a lot of my points, but let's see. I think because they didn't have the artists committed, it was difficult. I even said, maybe a list of last year's artists would have been helpful, as Deb said, to, sort of gauge the quality. And I didn't feel like they had an outline of how the artists would be selected. I was curious, like, who's going to decide? Do they have a background in the arts? Planning and evaluation. Deb talked about that. I just said, it lacks details, especially for arts participation. And identifying 6 artists to participate is a big task, and it's not on the timeline that I could find. And the other thing about the budget, there are 2 things about the budget. I thought $20,000 for a part-time event planner seemed high for this event for one-day program. And the other thing about the budget, I think they had one artist budgeted at $2,750, but $2,000 made it over to the column, so I wasn't quite sure what that meant. And I didn't think there was any artistic experience on the administrative team that was specifically mentioned. So those were some of my issues with the planning and evaluation. Outreach and engagement, from the budget, I assume that it is $25 to participate in this event. And I think that could be an obstacle to participation, especially if it's a like a family coming, that's becomes pretty expensive. And I just said that the arts don't seem like an integral part of the program. And I think Deb talked about that. Just the lack of details made it hard to feel like this was part of their program. And I just noted that the outreach engagement seems to lack depth.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. Chris, we'll have you go next.
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, thank you. And Peter.
Just one or two comments. First of all, I was taken aback by many of the individual dollar figures and the overall total in the budget. In other words, yeah, it's $25 a ticket. They expect to sell 2,000 of them for $50,000. Well, I mean, that's fine if they can, fine. But I think the cost ended up being in the $80,000-$90,000 range for an event that I would not have thought would have required all that. A lot of the specific numbers looked high to me. Just that. And I think the demographic statement is weak, although the event is open to the public and all are welcome. I think they rely on the diversity of the Tri-Faith Commons congregations, the three congregations. I suspect their intention is to draw participants primarily from those congregations and not Greater Omaha or the more local neighborhood. The letters of support are all from the Tri-Faith congregations. So all in all, a little self-centered and circumscribed in its audience.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion for this one?
I just want to add that I agree with what everyone has said. And I always use the mantra, and we used to, I mean, this was drummed into us early. Is the art driving the project?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, give you a few moments. Let me know when you're ready to do the next one. Chris, did I miss yours? Or are you still working? You're good. Okay, thank you. All right, Rachel, next.
Our next applicant is United by Culture Media for the United by Culture Festival. And this grant will help pay the artists who perform during the United by Culture Festival, which will be held in Lexington, Nebraska on August 18th and 20th. They estimate 3,000 people from central Nebraska region of the state will attend the events during the festival.
Okay, thank you. And Roxanne, we'll have you kick us off. You're muted.
Thanks. I thought this was ambitious for a 3-day festival with multiple venues and performances. The project and the artists are important to the community. The artist demo video was well done. I think the talent show to select the main stage artists is a fun way to engage the community and discover new artists. I would say, the other thing I made was bringing in a marimba sounds like a great headliner. And I think the quality would have been stronger if there was a commitment from the marimba. And then for planning and evaluation, I thought the goals were reasonable for the project. The information about the evaluation tool in the form of the survey is kind of vague. Is it going to be handed out at the event? Will it be bilingual? The administrators are qualified and they rely on committees for a lot of the work. It would have been helpful, though, to know more about the makeup of the committees, how many people, their number of years of involvement in the project. I would say presumably in the budget line for the talent show is prize money. I don't know that that was stated. And I thought the grant request was modest for a budget this large. And the budget does include a significant amount of applicant cash and corporate sponsors for a small community. And the outreach and engagement, I thought the demographics were helpful in understanding the community, and the programming choices seemed to be responsive to them. The audience is comprised of underserved participants in serving BIPOC, low-income communities, and geographic isolation. And I thought the marketing was strong for reaching their target audiences. That's what I have for this one.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, you're up next.
Yes, I agree with everything that Roxanne said with this application. And then I also took it a little bit in the context of what I know about Lexington, which is right up there from us, and probably one of the most diverse communities in our state. And I guess I would just like to see a little bit more articulation of some deeper goals, understanding the challenges that Lexington face and with regard to, you know, social justice and racial justice and all these things that could be explored through an event like this, and bridge building and community healing and all these types of things. I'd like to see a better articulation of some of those goals, I think, throughout. I also felt that it was very ambitious. I wonder about the sustainability of a project that's got a 40K budget, I think it was, in a community of 10,000 that is very, very, very economically challenged. And that I'd like to see a discussion of that sustainability and what that looks like in this grant application. I go back to my notes real quickly. The artistic, I think Roxanne addressed this, but I also would bring that up as well. It's hard to review the artistic quality or the merit of an event if the artists haven't been nailed down yet. And I think that's very, very important when you're reviewing a grant application, that some of that stuff is nailed down, or at least there's some examples given of folks that you might be leaning towards, or those that you think might participate. Yeah, I just felt the budget was pretty aggressive for an event for this part of the state, given the narration anyways. That's all I really can add.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Peter, anything to add?
Yeah, I just would echo. I think the survey that they want to use to evaluate their goals has not even been developed. And it would clearly have to be multilingual, and they would clearly need to find ways to connect with the community members who are non-English speakers. And they mentioned this as a difficulty. They're aware of the difficulty, but I'm not sure how they will reach such folks, who do not watch local TV stations and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And Deb, anything to add?
I agree with everything that's been said, and I know that Lexington is a community that is in transition and has had some bumps and challenges along the way. So while I celebrate these efforts, I agree, maybe just a little bit more clarity and maybe ask for a little help. That might be fine.
Yeah,
Well, one other thing that I guess I'd like to share, I know you didn't call on me, Ellen, but I've got a little bit of a concern about this safety of some of these things. You know, Lexington is right on the I-80 corridor, and I know that they suffer from a very large human trafficking issue and concerns, as does Grand Island, the community where I'm at. And I'd like to see in a grant of application of this nature that there's been some thought put forward to try to mitigate that circumstance, you know, that happening. And I didn't see that really articulated in a couple of these grants that are on that corridor. But I think that safety is a big concern when you bring those people together. And we know that that's an issue for the community.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other comments from anyone on this one? Okay, I'll give you a moment to make any updates and then we'll do our final application.
Oh, okay.
And thumbs up. Okay, thank you. All right, Rachel, last one.
Great. Last application. The applicant is the Village of Elmwood, and the project is the Village of Elmwood Pie Ride Music. The Village of Elmwood, which is population 660, lies between Lincoln and Omaha. On 6 summer nights, the first and third Thursday of June, July, and August, they will host the Elmwood Pie Ride. The event started 2 years ago, bringing bicyclists and local citizens out for dessert, pie, and pizza slices. In 2022, they attracted patrons from afar with musicians playing in the park. The event and enjoyment grew. The stakeholders are hoping to continue this growth with varieties of musicians, including folk and traditional musicians.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And Chris, you're up first.
Make sure I'm not on mute. So this was a good application, I think, to end on. I live in a small town, Dennebrog, Nebraska, and when I went into this grant, I was thinking about the village of Elmwood and how it relates to Nebraska and the opportunities that people in smaller towns in Nebraska have to experience the arts, and it takes on a little bit different flavor for me, I guess. And so I looked at the artistic quality of this thing and said, okay, what the project description, the artistic merit and qualification of the artists, we're not talking about folks going to the Met here, but I thought that it was spot on for the community of Elmwood. I really did. And I think that you could see that in the photographs that they submitted, people kind of mixing it up with these cyclists over good music, and then particularly elderly people in Elmwood getting out and participating in that. And it just seemed like there was a lot of fun going on. And sometimes that's what the arts are about. Other times there's a much deeper impact. We've been talking about some pretty heavy subjects here today. And then other times it's just good old fashioned fun. And it just felt that way when I was reviewing this grant application. So I thought that the artistic merit was pretty high. Planning and evaluation, there seems to be a pretty good embracing by the community to help plan this thing. I think that their goals are what they are. They understand they want to expand it a little bit, and I think that it's growing organically. I would like to see perhaps a peeling back of the onion of what they need to do with an evaluation to help expand that event. But at the end of the day, as I said, this is an event that's building community over music, pizza, and bicycle ride. What could be better than that? The planning process seems to be well formed. I think it's very collaborative. And I think that at least for the impact on this community, the budget for it is perfect. And it shows pretty good diversity of support and a whole lot of value for pretty small dollars. Regarding outreach and engagement, I think that the organizers have a vision for the future. They talk about inclusivity. They're looking at the expansion of the trail and what that might bring to their community. One of the underserved, or a couple of the underserved populations in this small Nebraska
I
town that I
can't
think
hear Chris.
serves is the veteran
Oh, we're
population, as
frozen.
the elderly population. Letters of support were pretty strong. I think they really shed a light on that collaborative network that's been developed for this thing, and the fact that the community really embraces it. And I just think it feels like a lot of fun and something that I would like to go to. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Peter looks to be frozen. There we go. Can you hear us, Peter? All right. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to Deb next.
I want to go. That's all I have to say. This is an application that is very compelling. It is, I look at a community this size that can pull off something like this. I just think that's amazing and exciting. You could tell there's been a lot of planning that took place in this and with this. And the idea that this community of less than 700 people is going to bring in Kuzitaki, which celebrates diversity, amazing amazing artists who are on the roster, so they've been vetted. And then Josh Hoyer, who has this whole neo soul sound. And by the time I was done with this, this was one that I just wanted to put my shoes on and attend this and to go have a good time. And food, the combination of food, art, and culture is so important in almost every single culture. The time we come together to break bread, the time we come together to celebrate. And I just saw this as a celebration. I thought they did a very, very good job of combining the physical aspect of this, but also making sure that the art drove the project. And I have a question of Chris. Do you still have, is there still pizza night in Dannebrog?
There sure is, and you need to come out on Thursday and have some with me, Deb.
Listen, for years, I wanted to come to that. And all I ever heard, and we'd been to Dannebrog many times, but I never made it on Thursday. And to hear my coworkers talking about this amazing pizza all the way home, I don't know how it was. I mean, that we never were there for the pizza night. So when you said that and you said you were from Dannebrog, I thought about that pizza that I missed out on. And I'm glad that that is still, I knew that that was an important part of the community. And not only was it an important part of the community, that was an important part for the NAC staff. So I kudos to this. And this will be something that I will look forward to attending. I just want to say,
hey, Deb, I'll break in just to echo what you're saying, and that I did make it. My wife and I made it out on a Thursday night, and the pizza night is at the Danish bakery. So that's the other remarkable thing about this. It is truly an experience.
Mike, I remember you talking about that pizza, and I could just.
Oh, and I don't know if it's the same owners, but the owner would play guitar and sing songs to the group that was there. And
You have different owners now, but the same pizza and the same nod to arts and culture every Thursday night. So
it's wonderful.
NAC, if you guys take a field trip, holler
That's
at
the
your
place.
Okay, thank you. Roxanne, let's have you go next.
I echo a lot of what the other panelists have said. I did want to specifically call out for kudos for outlining the criteria for selecting the artists. It was very specific. I don't know if it was my computer, but I could not open the work samples. So I missed the picture, some of the pictures, and I missed seeing the logo. So I really wanted to see that logo. But I thought it was, planning and evaluation was good. The plan was really detailed. I liked that it included, post-event feedback after each event, final reports. The goals are measurable, project evaluations in place. And I think the sort of picture of the community was really helpful in me understanding what the community looks like. And I think we should meet there. Pie ride. Pick a date.
I agree.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. And we will finish out with Peter. You're on mute. Can you unmute, Peter?
Sorry.
There we go. Thank
My
you.
numbers, and I'm looking at this event and hearing from you all, and I agree it was delightful, and I wrote so in my comments. I think somehow the specific questions and how I felt compelled to respond to them made my numbers a little low. And perhaps that's all I need to say. It's not so much a comment on the application. But, things like demographics, underserved audiences, increasing accessibility. This is just, I don't know, some of those kinds of things just didn't seem to fit. At any rate, I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Any final comments for this last applicant? Okay, I'll give you a moment to make any updates. Give me your thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now that all applications have been discussed and scored, we'll take a 5-minute break. And during this time, the NAC staff will tally the scores and prepare information for our final discussion. When panelists reconvene, we'll review the procedures and make our final determinations. The final portion of the meeting will be closed to the public, so we'll end the live stream now. But before we do, I want to remind all applicants that you'll be notified in June about the funding decisions for this grant category. So to all of those watching